to the organizers for having me here. It's been great so far. And thanks, Aurel, for having this very nice review of baronification. You basically did 95% of my job. I'd like to thank also the jet lag that allowed me to have plenty of time to prepare this talk. So the session is title is Modeling Challenges for Cross-Correlation. So first thing, of course, that I did is to ask ChatGPT what are the modern challenges for cross-correlations. Bunch of things that they provided, but I was happy to see that there was, among the list, there was nonlinear structure formation and baryonic feedback, galaxy bias modeling, so scale redshift, selection, non-local effects, and multi-probe consistencies to have a framework that can self-consistently model different probes. So this is actually what I'll talk about in this next few minutes. So thanks ChatGPT as well for agreeing with me. So this framework I want to talk about is the Baco simulation project. This is, I think, a unique project in such that we just run very few simulations as opposite of large suites of numerical simulations. These are gravity-only and body simulations. And so these are the fantastic people I work with in this group. Lourdes is also here in the room. And so we can just run few large and high-resolution body simulations. It's in post-processing, we model cosmology with cosmology scaling methods. And then we add in post-processing also galaxies with hybrid Lagrangian bias expansion or with HOD or sham. And of course, we model also on top of the gravity-only simulation baryons with the baryonification methods that Aurel just described. So I'm going to focus on baryons for today. And as Aurel already said, so it's very important to validate your baryonification against hydrodynamical simulations. This is just an effective methodology. In this case, I'm just showing as an example a validation that we did with 74 different hydrodynamical simulations, very different groups and codes and stuff. So we fitted the suppression in the matter power spectrum, and we predicted the baryon content in HELOS as a function of the suppression, finding very, very nice agreements with the hydrosims. So this is nice and encouraging. As Aurel said also, baryonification doesn't just modify the matter field, but also is able to add different fields to the matter. So we can split the matter field into dark matter, galaxies, and gas fields. This is nice because actually it enables cross-correlation and multi-probe analysis. This is also something that we need to test, of course. And here's some more validation we did with Raul Angulo a couple of years ago. So it was the first time the baryonification was extended to model thermal Sunyaev Zel'dovich. And we did validate this method against the Bahamas hydrodynamical simulations. So we checked that we could reproduce simultaneously the power spectra of matter, electron pressure, stars, and gas, and the cross-correlation of electron pressure and matter in Bahamas. And actually, it's very nice because we can also produce light cones and convergence and thermal Sunyaev-Zel'dovich maps as a function of astrophysical scenarios and cosmology in a very quick way. We just load our simulation, change the cosmology with the cosmology scaling methods, add baryonification on top, and then create these maps. So we also checked what are the baryonic effects on galaxy-galaxy lensing. So typically, we just focus on matter power spectrum for cosmic shear. But in this work led by Matteo Zennaro last year, we tried to model baryonic effects on galaxy-galaxy lensing. So we use this hybrid Lagrangian bias expansion. This is just a Lagrangian bias expansion with advection to Lyrian space given by where the displacement is measured in embodied simulations. So this is, allows you to accurately predict the bias field up to K 0.6, 0.7, so you can push to smaller scales. And we actually had good news there. We understood that we could approximate the baryonic effects on galaxy-galaxy lensing just from the baryonic effects on the matter power spectrum. So we found that the suppression on the galaxy-galaxy lensing could be very accurate at 1% level, be approximated by just the square root of the suppression in the matter power spectrum. So this is very nice. And we validated with flamingo simulations, actually, across different feedback strengths, number densities, selections, redshift. And this is up to this 0.6, 0.7 inverse megaparsec, where this Lagrangian bias formalism is valid. So this is cool for 3 times 2 point, for instance, because you can avoid to do some modeling, extra modeling on galaxy-galaxy lensing. So we apply this formalism thanks to neural network emulators to cosmic shear data. So this is the results. Thanks, Ariel, for spoiling that. But I mean, to be fair, it's also 3 years ago, so not very new. So we were able to actually exclude some of the most extreme, so strong and weak feedback here. And we were in agreement with essentially with the Bahama suite that was calibrated with the X-ray gas fraction. And actually, of course, we also have seen the cosmological parameters. And here I'm showing S8 and omega matter for full DES year 3, so without any scale cuts. And if you ignore baryonic feedback, you get these blue contours, whereas if you include baryonification with 7 free parameters, you get these red contours. As you can see, this shift toward Planck. So our main analysis was in agreement with Planck at better than 1 sigma. But just as a word of caution, so this does not mean that the baryonic feedback is solving this tension. So this is, I think, very important to understand, because this year 3 official analysis was using scale cuts. So this was not the contours that this year 3 was finding. Actually, this is, I think, a good plot to understand what's the difference in between the 2 results. So here we have the this year 3 official contours, and the blue one was what we obtained. And there are several different differences in our analysis. Baryons is just negligible when you use scale cuts. So this is with scale cuts of this. And actually, it's way more important non-linearities. So when you go from halofit to our non-linear matter power spectrum that is obtained with embodied simulations, so it is 0.5 sigma shift toward higher S8. Actually, also intrinsic alignment is important. So, for instance, for non-linearities, we are quite sure that our modeling with the emulators is more accurate than halofit. For intrinsic alignment, this is debatable which intrinsic alignment model is better to be used, for instance. And we also repeated this analysis with KITS 1000, this year 3, and HSC in combination. But I mean, I can talk to you more about this if you have questions. It's very important to have consistency check in this. So this is what we have done. With Angela Chen, we measured the baryonic effects in cosmic shear with the CF3 using only small scales. And then we predicted the baryon fraction and compared with an X-ray compilation of gas fractions, and see that we're in good agreement, even though the cosmic shear constraints were larger than the scattering, the X-ray fraction. And we did the opposite exercise actually with Sebastian. So we took a large compilation of gas and stellar mass fractions from galaxy clusters selected in actually very different way, and calibrated with weak lensing measurements. And we predicted the matter power spectrum obtained fitting these gas fractions, and see that it was in good agreement with the cosmic shear results. And finally, I want to talk about higher order statistics. This is a forecast that we did with Pierre Barger for Euclid DR1, and we checked basically what Aurel was showing with three-point statistics. So you get bias constraints if you don't use baryons, and actually we found that adding bispectrum will increase the posteriors on omega matter by 50%, by 50%, and S8 by 20%, including three-point statistics. And finally, I want to leave just with this slide. We have this very nice compilation of neural network emulators. Bacoemus is completely public. Last week we have a new release that is completed in JAX, and we go to smaller scales. We have larger priors, higher redshifts. So please download and use it. Thanks.
Questions? I guess then, while people still think of questions, I will start. Is the blue box there the cosmology prior that you used in the DES analysis?
Actually, it's the red box.
Okay, so that was already the new one.
Yeah, yeah.
I am surprised by the large difference in nonlinear models.
Oh yeah, I mean, but this by HaloFit actually. It's between HaloFit and Bacoemu. It's 0.5 sigma, but within HM code and Bacoemu would be much less, actually. So in the DES plus KITS reanalysis, that was much more in agreement with our analysis.
Interesting. I'd love to talk about it afterwards because I find pretty good agreement between HaloFit and Euclid Emulator 2. In terms of propagated to cosmology.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, this is the perfect slide to be on. I thought this was a great breakdown of sort of this error budget. And it's fascinating that intrinsic alignment is really important. That's not a surprise. But the baryons aren't making such a big difference here, at least once you take out the nonlinearity. Are you not so concerned about the baryons, or do you think this is more of a coincidence that they're small here?
No, actually, when you apply scale cuts, baryons goes just from the green contours to the blue contours. So this is just 0.2 sigma. When you remove scale cuts, you analyze all the scales. You go from the blue to the red. So that's almost 1 sigma.
Okay, good. And so this whole concept of without scale cuts is funny. There's always going to be some scale cut, I'd imagine, but a much more inclusive scale cut.
Yeah.
At that point, you think baryons would be more important than intrinsic alignment?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Maybe I follow up on this plot, if you can bring it back. It's a really nice plot. The other one.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so this one, I think. So would you agree that this answers Job's question about low sigma 8, or is there more to it? So we just screwed up all this, essentially.
So can you repeat?
This morning, Job was asking, okay, now we don't have SA tension anymore, but we should go back and check why we had one in the beginning.
Okay.
This is the answer.
Okay, I mean, this answer is for DES, I guess. And I guess in DES year 3, there's no SA tension. But when we have also all those compilation of S8 measurements, I would like to know how correlated are all those measurements. Because I think like model that we use are kind of similar. For instance, systematic errors and theoretical errors are not included in most of these analyses, and so I think should also be taken with a pinch of salt.
Just to clarify, the point I was making that it wasn't just lensing; it was a whole bunch of probes that were finding the same thing. So that still remains to be explained, I think.
And if I make also a comment on this plot, I do feel these are a posteriori choices. As a collaboration, of course, DES did a lot of homework to understand why we arrived at our fiduciary choices and why we think that should be the baseline. Of course, one can then always pick their path through the parameter plane afterwards.
Yeah, I agree, but then I would be concerned if the blinding is the thing that we trust, in the sense that if we blind and we trust our blinded results, and then a posteriori you can, with different models, shift so much the contours, like 1.5 in a 2 sigma tension, then I wouldn't be so sure to call it a tension. That's my point.
But I think it will always be the case that our results are within a given model, right? So we will always have to...
Hopefully not, right?
No, of course. How would we do a model-independent inference?
No,
and in that case,
the best case scenario is that our models are so accurate that changing models that are more or less, we can trust more or less at the same level, wouldn't shift the posterior so much. I guess that would be the best case scenario.
So I mean, I love this plot, and I totally agree with what Elizabeth said about this plot. But would we have had to marginalize over all of that? Would that have been the right thing to do?
I think the right thing to do, in my opinion, would be to add theoretical errors of all these models in the analysis.
Which means marginalizing.
I mean, just as an example for that, wouldn't then be the TAT contour be the right one because it contains NLA as a proper subspace?
Not always, because it can be just shifting the posterior for volume prior effects. If you have large priors in TAT and it's not really constrained. So I think it's more complicated than that, and that's also what KITS plus DES reanalysis says.
Then let's switch over to lightning talks.